Yeah, I gotta tell you, there's a lot to talk about. Yeah, I mean, a lot of information kind of jam-packed into that. A lot of information that is potentially called into question, but a lot of the results, quote unquote, I think are controversial. I don't know. I mean, I got a lot of opinions on it, but I want to hear how y'all feel, like first impressions.
I think I understand what you're trying to say. Several times, I think, oh, at least in my opinion, I believe that they were exposing several information that for me was very interesting to hear, but at the same time, I was kind of like a skeptical because it was very generalized. Um, I don't know if um, but however, um, it is interesting to me, and something that I was thinking throughout the whole documentary is the importance that they give to oxytocin. There, that I said it, and but also how dating has changed, the whole like virtual, and also like how even the pandemic is affecting how much people can like touch each other, like how they can relate to each other. So it does play a role right now on how people are getting to connect with each other. But there's also this thing that sometimes people don't even like see each other. They just met like playing video games, and then they're like, "Oh, I fall in love with you." So how important is really the oxytocin to actually feel love? I think that we're playing a lot on that card, but sometimes it doesn't even happen, and they still have people who like have very long and healthy relationship without it.
So would it really be love, or would it be their misinterpretation of oxytocin towards love and be like, oh yeah, I'm so happy playing with you. It might be love. I might just be in love.
I mean, if one way to see it, yeah. Um, but that, I think that's also where Mansi is trying to go. Like, I think that they were trying to like narrow down love, like to like this is the element,
Oxytocin. Yeah.
this is the pill that's gonna give you love. It's like, well, the love is more than that. Well, at least I hope. Maybe there is an actual pill, and they just like throw it at people, and then like, did you imagine you just buy a pill, just like take it, you give it to the person you want to like to fall in love, and everybody's happy or everybody's sad. Who knows? Because everybody's fall in love in everybody.
Yeah, they will become like Oprah. They're just gonna start throwing love around for everyone. MDMA pills for everyone.
I don't think that's. I mean, the way you guys are putting it, it kind of just puts it into perspective for me. We're basically, euphoria or like, dopamine kind of works in the same manner, where basically people can take drugs for that to give them this artificial sense of happiness. But regardless of that, that doesn't necessarily imply that they are happy. So
Yeah.
in the same sense that you can have these artificial outlets for love, but that doesn't necessarily imply that it's actually love.
That's
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
that's
that
interesting. I was about to say that as well. I mean, see, here they portray and they limit the act of love in this very small and confined manner. But if you, they barely touch upon things that we love. For example, someone who loves their pet and someone who loves art. I mean, both will be referred to as loving a thing, but when you come to measure it or when you come to the relevance of it, of course, the loss of the pet is going to be more strenuous on the person than the loss of the art.
Is it because of the fact that you can actually hug your pet and touch your pet and, have those kind of stimulus where it kind of gives you the simulation of love versus a piece of art where you can't do much about it, but actually just look about it or even just think about it? So would that be the reason why one would say that, yeah, the kind of love you feel for a living thing is more than you could feel for something static or something inanimate?
No, I mean
but
even the art you can touch it, you can feel it, you can smell it, you can feel the textures of the paint,
But it
of the
doesn't
brush
give you
strokes
love
and
back. It
everything.
doesn't give you the same
but
thing back, or it doesn't return it to
I
you,
mean,
does it?
I do understand what Israel's trying to say, but sometimes I feel like some people give enough meaning to an object to the point that they are
Yeah.
willing to like that they love that object more than something else, and they're willing to like hurt it, like hurt somebody
Like
in
maybe
some-
a toy from their childhood, or maybe like a favorite blanket or something.
Yeah, or maybe
A
like for
monkey.
example, and without going too far, I don't think this is love necessarily, but even the whole concept of the statues are happening. Some people want to like, don't remove them, and like, yes, I remove them because the statue in that place is not really the statue. It's like the memories of his predecessors. So it's kind of like they want that memory to remain, and it is represented in the statue.
I think it takes into account the relevance of it as well.
Hmm?
The relevance and the importance. But one thing I was hoping they would touch up on in this documentary was the fact that people do crazy things when it comes to alafas, when it comes to love, because you see people going to through these extremes that, for example, if if someone's financials do not allow him or her to purchase something for their significant others, people would generally buy it on credit, knowing that they cannot pay it off when the time comes to. And things like that, they get into fights with their own family, friends, and they push aside everyone else just to make sure that the person that who they're in love with is comfortable, is feeling like they belong. We see that all the time. I mean, most recent one I can think of is the royal family. I don't know if you guys have seen or heard about a Netflix show called Crown. It's about the
I've
English
seen
royal
about
family
heard of it.
and how that works, and how their relationships work. So it's people are blinded by this judgment and this illusion of love. And when it comes time to step back away from it and take a look at the bigger picture of what's going on, people don't want to accept the fact that, okay, it was short lived and that's it. That I need to make my peace with it.
Yeah,
That's another interesting concept, though. I'm sorry. Another thing that I saw interesting in there was we want to make love last for our the rest of our lives or whatever, but we don't recognize that, okay, in order to make that happen, sometimes work needs to be put in on both ends or whatever. So the concept was pretty interesting to me, how they mentioned at the end that technically humans weren't supposed to stay together past their children's adulthood age, or once they grow up, the parents weren't supposed to stay together, but we expect that the love is supposed to last and that we're supposed to still stay together. So I don't know if I agree with it yet or not, and I don't know if what I think about it yet, but it's just an interesting thing that they mentioned, which I think might need a little bit more discussion, or might need a little bit more understanding.
yeah. I mean, a lot of the points that I wanted to bring up, I mean, y'all are touching on. But I kind of to sort of render explicit like the underlying thesis for all of this, because look, we got some different perspectives. Not everybody was saying the same thing, and you had some bioevolutionists counteracting some psychobiologists. But I suppose the standard of measurement remained the same, and that was an attempt to determine the nature of love, which is rooted in our nature, human nature. Now, I mean, I don't even know where to begin. On the one hand, there's this whole notion of love being something that is sort of an undeniable desire in human beings. I wish they kind of said a bit more about that, but they kind of focused on the process itself rather than the origin of the process. So talking about things like the sense of smell and, you know, the swapping of saliva and stuff like that. And sort of, you know, the physical, the proportions between, you know, ideal partners, romantically speaking. I can't help but wonder, you know, and you know, I'm talking about the beginning of the film here. I also want to say some things about towards the end what they're getting after. But I can't help but wonder if something that was kind of unsaid, but you know, I think a direct implication of what was said is that if you lack these kinds of qualities, then it severely impairs your ability to have to experience love. I mean, I'll give you a perfect example. I don't have a sense of smell. Don't have a sense of smell. So according to this documentary, I'm going to have a difficult time falling in love in the way that nature intended, quote unquote. Now, I mean, that tracks historically, don't get me wrong. But having said that, I do think it's interesting that they're trying to say this thing that we call love, that we think is so intangible, is in fact extremely biological, almost down to its very core, to the point where it's reflected in all of our various biological processes. I mean, later they talked about, you can literally die of a broken heart. It's an interesting concept. But the point being is this, that it begins with, like everything else, our knowledge of everything else kind of begins with the senses, even our knowledge of love. And if you consider yesterday's topic, love and personal identity, you are becoming more human when you pursue love, insofar as it's tapping into sort of this whole cohesive bodily aspect. I mean, they made a lot of various points, but one of the big ones was that something like sexual intercourse is a necessary component for love, such that, I mean, they almost went so far as to say that you need that in order to maintain love. And, I compare that with some of the major religions in the world that argue for things like chastity and stuff like that. How would this sort of documentary, these scientific studies, relate to these more traditional notions? I mean, what about the idea of having a wedding with no partner? And that's becoming popular in various communities. I mean, it's kind of like, well, maybe the whole institution of wedding ceremonies is more about the pomp and circumstance, and it really has nothing to do with love. I mean, it's some pretty interesting implications that you could draw from this, and I don't think they're irrational. Well, I mean, I don't think the implications themselves are a stretch to draw from someone that's been saying. And I only bring this up because most humans, they get their first understandings of love through these ancient traditional cultural religions. And this documentary is saying, well, no, it doesn't matter. Love is built into your DNA. It's built into your biology. I mean, it's a pretty big statement.
I think the application here is just that, dang it, how can I word this? I think a lot of our social constructs kind of begin with these very naturalistic human qualities to say, well, yeah, dancing is something that people find valuable and it's humanistic, but yet that begins with having feet. And in that same way, perhaps loves is this human construct, but it begins with having the certain assortments of chemicals within your brain. And so I think it's, for the most part, everything that exists it's like it begins at the very biological functional level, but how we decide about to giving value to things, that's where we differentiate. And in terms of culture, I mean, yeah, you're absolutely right. We've seen it through many different cultures. They perceive it differently. Me and Fernando in psychology were actually reading about this at the moment, where they're talking about how in some cultures at a very young age they actually teach children about sex and how to pleasure their partner, and in other cultures they don't expose it to them at all, and they give the big differences between doing so and how it may be beneficial or how it might not be. Whichever one you might fall on, that's on you.
Guess which is more beneficial.
But that's not the subject. But anyways, but yeah, that's how I see it. I mean, I think you're absolutely right, Manzi, is that a lot of what we consider to be sort of these spiritual, very, I guess, metaphysical qualities of life kind of begin at the biological, naturalistic level, which kind of makes you even wonder, well, does that even exist? Is that kind of part of life? Is that really just a social construct?
Well,
But yeah, I
another
mean,
question
then touching up on culture, and I did notice this throughout the documentary that they primarily remained in the Far East and West side of the world. They never came into Asian continents or the Middle Eastern regions or even South American parts where religion and religious teachings are given a higher value than social constructs. And that being said, they did touch up on people dying from heartbreak, but that does not make it a fact that it does happen, and it does happen a lot of the time. Because if I'm not mistaken, there was a philosopher, I think Chrysippus, who supposedly died laughing at his own joke. But that does not necessarily mean you can die of laughter. Maybe he was having a stroke when he was laughing, and he got kind of stuck in that laughing stance. But yes, your heart suffers at a heartbreak, but that's not the root cause of killing someone, because that's just not how it is. Otherwise, instead of people committing suicide after a heartbreak, they would just wait for, okay, I've been heartbroken for an hour, I should die any minute now. That's just not how it works. I mean, we're built much stronger than that. So them in the documentary, them having to say that physical contact or very close interactions, which includes kissing and intercourse and all that, is the only way to strengthen a relationship. No, because in our culture, we have some of the longest and healthiest lasting marriages throughout the world. And why? Because we teach our kids that there is a time for everything. Instead of indulging in intercourse, we are told to wait until it is time for you to get married and express your full self to that one person. That way, uh, you don't necessarily go through those hardships and having the lack of trust that develops. For example, someone who's been dating all their life, right? And has gone through a lot of breakups, they would have less trust in this new relationship as compared to their old one. So with these teachings of not indulging in intercourse, not having physical contact with so many people, that's why I refrain. I mean, even myself, I don't like a lot of physical contact, even from my own family when they come hug me on birthdays or after a long day or whatever. I mean, just a handshake and we're fine. That's it. I don't need reassurance. I don't need hugs. Like that's just not me. But even for people who are very touchy and grabby, even for them, they I think they after a while they lose the sense of when it's a genuine hug, or when it's just someone like, okay, hug it out, whatever.
I think to Yusuf's point, like I agree that they kept it either too far east or far west. They never came in the middle, and in that case, like there are so many fables and stories. Like I don't agree with the notion of physical touch being primary or being very important, in the sense that we have so many fables and stories and poems about kind of similar to Romeo and Juliet. However, there's no suicide at the end. It's a broken heart that leads to their deaths. And it's the fact that they love each other from afar. It's there's nothing, there's no intercourse, there's no sexual desire in it. It's just the concept of love is the well-being and happiness of the other person. And those are the challenges and the stories that are told to children, or that's how it's love is the notion of love is romanticized in I guess the Middle region or
Exaggerated, I would
Middle
say.
Asia, whatever it is. But I don't think I agree with that in terms of the you as humans. I feel like we have the ability to love from afar and still be as in love as you would if you were together with that person. So in that case, I think their study either needs improved standards, or we need to expand the study research base in terms of how do we all experience love, because I think it's very individualized and very personal, where there is no set standard. There's no actual level or mark that we can say that, yeah, at this level it's the highest level of love, because nobody knows what goes on inside the heart. You can actually test it, or you can work with it in laboratories, but feeling wise, like while you're feeling love, you cannot test it. You cannot put it on a piece of paper and say, yeah, these are the results, you're 97% in love with this person, and so on.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't think we can just focus on one thing, but maybe I mean, I guess that's part of what Mansi was touching about. Like maybe Mansi cannot fall in love through the smell, but maybe he would like a different type of sense. Maybe he's very visual. I don't know. I don't know. I'm sorry. But the thing is, yes, I see. That's why I'm saying it because of the glasses. You're just a mess. I'm sorry. You're just a mess. Oh my God. No, but yes. I mean, honestly, like yes, I do agree that we do not need like for example the hug to fall in love. For me it is I love to hug, don't get me wrong, because that way I can feel like it is a way for me to feel, but it's part of my culture, which I also think that's part of what Yusha is touching about. That I do believe that part also why your relationship lasts so much is not just that part of what you're being educated, it's also part of the culture that is kind of like you're in this mess, like solve it, fix it, whatever it is that you need to do, which is not something that other countries have that much as a, I guess, necessity when it comes to like whenever you have a relationship. They tend to be more like, well, if this one doesn't work that much, maybe there is another one in the fish out there that can be more fitting to your personality. But when it comes to that approach, like people are changing constantly their personalities, they're changing like goods and tastes. So that means that they're gonna like branch out eventually. And if you have that mentality, then you're not really gonna have anyone that lasts the entire life because
And
you're
I
not
think,
trying
yeah, go
to
ahead,
work with
sorry.
it. No, it's okay, you can go.
I think another interesting factor is that um, it's a very popular thing. We all say to ourselves and others in the times when the times are trying and tough in terms of what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And if you look at it from a point of a heartbreak, if you feel that intense um, dislike towards someone, or you feel that the feeling of being unwanted or ignored or being left out or whatever, if if the pattern keeps repeating itself, what's going to happen to the heart? I feel like it's going to solidify, and that's why it's not. It's in our culture, at least, it's frowned upon if you have a girlfriend or if you have a boyfriend or if you've been in an intimate relationship outside of your marriage, where you're putting yourself at risk for the heartbreak, and eventually your heart just hardens and it's no longer being able to accept the love that's being given to you in truest sense. So in that case, I feel like that's another area that needs to be explored upon in terms of what does repeated action do? Like practice makes perfect. So if you get good at getting your heart broken, eventually where do you draw the line and what's the consequence of it? What happens to you and others as a result?
Yeah, but
Well,
I
I
do.
think I think that kind of goes back to what you're saying though. Practice makes perfect. Well, what if we turn that around and say, well, what if someone has no experience in empathy, has no experience in actually showing affection to their lover, and they actually would appreciate that out of their standards of love? So then, if they had no practice with it, if they had no experience with it, perhaps they had their own affection that they wanted to give, but didn't know how to do it. So I don't think it's necessarily about one or the other. I think it's this idea of moderation, essentially, where
Mm-hmm.
perhaps you getting heartbroken may in some sense, if you don't know how to control it, may lead to you becoming cold. But then in the same sense, it could maybe help you understand yourself and understand perhaps I was heartbroken because I wasn't necessarily with the right person. Perhaps this person's better off as a friend. And since now that I've gone through this tragedy, this adversity, perhaps now I understand what kind of Aristotle kind of would say is like the golden mean, where essentially now I understand what love really can be. Now that I've
So I
Yeah,
think,
understood what it's not, maybe I understand what it
yeah.
can be.
No, I do want to expand a little bit upon. I'm gonna do an Orlando thing. I'm gonna expand on somebody else's idea.
Wow,
Wow.
how it
But
is.
yeah, I do believe that sometimes it does happen that someone is very open to the experience of loving, and you like the first time you're just kind of like trying to do whatever it takes, and the experience happened to be a disaster, then yes, you can kind of like become a little bit cold, which is unfortunate. But sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes somebody was not really appreciating what is being given to that person. And then when you get the heart broken and you start analyzing your actions or whatever it is that took you to that position, then in the next relationship, you're actually like more self-aware of your actions and you try to like do things better, which normally it is funny because normally like you see in the other person like the mistakes they were doing, and if you're not open also to understand that that person may not have those experiences as you have right now, it can create like different like issues So you can
Well,
start
okay.
like,
Three things that I can see from that. The first part would be that we're still isolating it in terms of romantic notions, because I guess it's the age group or it's the most popular discussion. Maybe because we're not expanding towards the other kinds of love, which are, I believe, more purer forms of love, like the paternal love or the love between siblings or the love between a mentor and a mentee. That's also love. Like, you care for each other, and so you respect that person who's teaching you knowledge or giving you knowledge. And as a mentor, you care for the mentee in terms of their well-being, giving them advice, telling them which is the best way to go forward, and so on and so forth. So there are those different forms of it that I think needs to be expounded on or expanded on. And the second thing, the part of let's see, what was I saying? It was something that Fernando said about trying it again with another person. But the problem is, yes, you get to correct your mistakes. However, it's a two-way street. So you can't correct the same mistakes with a different person, if that makes sense, because those same mistakes weren't made with that different person. Yeah, you learn from the experience that, okay, I shouldn't do this probably, or I should be like this probably, but it is possible that the next person wants that exact thing what the other person didn't want from you, and now you're depriving that person from that thing because you're correcting your mistake, you know.
But what if it was a negative quality? Like, let's say perhaps you have a short temper and maybe you haven't been in a relationship that involved sort of this patience. And so if you were never to have confronted that adversity within yourself with that person, then you wouldn't even know that it existed. So then when you do finally find the person that you feel that is right for you, you are for the first time confronting this adversity, thus don't have a previous experience of essentially getting over it, or perhaps feeling the empathetic notion of the other person and finding the patience.
Okay, so there is also this belief or this concept where it's either becoming more popular or now just being discovered upon, where people are now taking a step back, like especially millennials. They're taking a step back from rushing into relationships, and they're like, I'll work on myself first, and then I'll bring the best foot forward to the relationship. And I feel like there are two sides of it. The first one would be that people help us form our relations, and they help us understand us. We're not monks, and most of us don't have the talent of monks to be able to understand ourselves in isolation. We need somebody else to resound what we think is right, or we see ourselves, or how we see ourselves. So that's one aspect of it that I see with our generation. Another aspect might be that, okay, you want to perfect yourself. That's good in terms of, okay, you're not bringing your baggage, or you're not bringing other things to the
Oh, did she cut out?
Yeah, maybe.
go.
But Orlando, I was gonna answer. I was just typing up the answer for your question. The first part being, why do we need others to tell us what flaws we have?
All right.
And two, why does it have to come through an intimate relationship and not as through friends or family? Like, my mom always tells me I have a very short temper.
Mm.
I don't need to have an other relationship to tell me that.
I see what you mean.
And two, I know I have a short temper on basis of how other people react to my reaction.
Mm.
So it's not necessarily that
So my
only
only
bad.
argument against that would be something your sister said actually yesterday. And she called it her love language, I think, or she called it something about love languages. Basically, you have a standard for love. I think in an affectionate, romantic relationship with someone, it's the way you act with your significant other is going to be completely different than how, not necessarily completely, but it's going to be different from how you act with your friends. And
Agreed.
so, in that sense, you have certain qualities, certain habits, and certain mannerisms that you experience only solely with your significant other. You can't experience that with your friend. You can't experience that with your parents. And these
Agreed.
traits aren't something that you just come upon from interacting with your friends or your parents. It's something that you have to come across from being in that relationship. So what my argument here is, if you never get to experience those before even getting married, then I'm saying is that to some extent you're kind of inexperienced in those affectionate relationships, and that can lead to something kind of drastic in a sense where you have no idea how to deal with these affectionate relationships. And so then when you're pushed into this relationship where you're essentially marrying someone that, you might find to be attractive, and might find them to be, virtuous or what have you, but yet you don't know how to express yourself affectionately because, once again, you haven't had that experience.
Yeah, can I play the devil's advocate for a second?
Sure, go
All right.
ahead.
I'm,
Let's go
I'm,
ahead.
I'm loving all these points, and I am inclined to agree with them. But just for the sake of discussion here, what if you didn't have to go through those painful experiences? What if there were an algorithm that allowed you to, how did they put it, increase the potential of a successful relationship based upon, I think they said over 100 questions, many of which didn't seem to relate to love? I mean, that's kind of the idea, is that maybe we don't need to rely on experience so much. If we've mastered the chemical components that result in what we experience love to be, and many of those have everything to do with the particular partner, upbringing, all that stuff that we've discussed, sense, whatever. We don't need to rely so much on firsthand experiences that might, to quote Isra, harden our hearts. We could, potentially enter into a relationship with, a new, I suppose, innocent heart, and have it go really well. Odds are.
Well,
I was muted.
to that, I would like to say that it cannot rely upon an algorithm. Why? Because
as well.
Yeah.
because it's what was it called? There were a couple of students at the time of Einstein, right? They wanted to prove a theory, and they needed their peer, which was Einstein at the time, to prove it. They set up the experiment. They showed him the results from the previous experiments, all consistent. But as soon as they brought in Einstein to observe the experiment and to write his findings on it, it went horribly wrong. Then they repeated the same procedure, same location, everything the same again, but without Einstein. It worked perfectly. They did it a couple of times. They helped Einstein understand the fact that a third person intervening or even observing changes the results drastically. And Einstein stepped away more than 40 feet to observe this reaction or this process happen. And then and only then did this experiment take place, and he approved it. He wrote his findings on it. From 40 feet away. Just by observing, he can change the physics of an outcome. So with this being said, I'll link it back to the algorithm. The algorithm is just code written by humans who observe, humans who have flaws in their own deduction, in their own findings. No matter how unbiased a person is, they will always have flaws. Even in the code does not necessarily mean that technology is better than us. We are the ones who wrote the technology, hence technology having faults. And we cannot depend on or even take into account technology's results as a better outcome for determining if a person is more compatible with person B or not.
What the?
What happened with the camera? Turned down? What? Like, how did that happen?
Alright, I'll edit it out. I'll talk to you at home.
Holiday season.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say, that even the algorithm, sure, it might seem perfect, but at the end of the day, it lacks that human connection that is based on our interaction. Why do we go to therapists in person, even in times of COVID? Because the therapist needs to read us as a body, not through a screen or anything. Because that's how they make their own deduction. And then secondarily comes the technology to kind of find if the doctor missed anything.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
And just to add on to that, I mean, wasn't Susan Mulkin, I think, who said that whenever you're trying to make make ethical ideas, it seems like the person's always putting their bias into it. I think I don't remember. Whatever.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, And the creator of that sort of algorithm, I mean, he does, how did he qualify it? He said, dating is digital, but love is still,
Analog.
Analogical.
yeah.
Yeah.
So he does allow for this kind of, it's still, at the end of the day, it does boil down to how you interact in real time,
No,
physically.
what I'm gonna say is this: I understand that the nature of the document do not allow more people, but I mean they showed just one good case.
One
So I like
success.
one successful case, and even them at the beginning was kind of like, maybe this is not gonna work. Maybe this is not gonna work until like, okay, it worked. Like it worked out. So no, I do agree with you, Sha. Like the thing is like with the algorithm, like we're so different. So it's like how can you even match? So like how can you create such a vast algorithm? It's like crazy. But I do believe that that guy, the one who created that application, he does touch onto something that I do believe that is also that is in my country. It is taught that is kind of like you need to like they normally said that if you want to be happy, you need to marry someone who has the same vision as you when it comes to like working or place to live in. Because, like, for example, if you have someone who loves cold weather and the other one loves hot weather, like if you don't go to like balance, like you have to either you go to a mid place where like sometimes it's cold, sometimes it's hot. But if you don't do that, somebody's always gonna be grumpy in the house because it's always hot in this thing, and the other one is always cold, you know. So even that, like you have to take those things in consideration according to some of the teachings in my country.
I mean,
And
yeah, that's very well said. I was just it just came to me. I'm sorry for the rude interruption, but today is my parents' I think 26th anniversary or something. And they one thing they always tell me and my sisters and my younger brother, of course, that no matter what happens in a relationship, regardless if two people are compatible or not, they might be the best couple in the world, but no matter what happens, don't go to bed angry at each other. No matter how long it takes, resolve that conflict then and there. And I think that is another key aspect of when it comes to communication. Sure, I'm not good at communication. I suck at it, and I know that. But with my significant other, I'll try to better myself. I'll try to better express myself that, hey, I know this was my fault. I know I was supposed to take out the trash. I didn't, but I'm sorry. Let's go out to dinner next night or whatever, but I will try to resolve it to maintain that mutual understanding in the relationship that both people have and draw benefit from.
Hey, I'm sorry.
So
the
I think
trust is a
I
little
feel
bit
like
funny.
Nancy's taking mental notes. He's like, oh, I should do
Oh yeah, I should
I see him. I see
take
his
the
face.
trash next time.
He's like,
I
let
should
me
take
let me
the
get
trash
this
next time.
down.
There's a
But
reason
I
I
that
chose
came
this
to my
document.
mind. Another thing that I was gonna say before I kind of accidentally dropped the call was that love actually doesn't just formulate our understanding of what love is. I believe love is almost like a gateway to other emotions and other types of human behaviors. In terms of, okay, we become more empathetic when we care for somebody, when we love them, we kind of make sure that they're not getting hurt because of us, or we make sure that our actions aren't hurting them inadvertently. We're looking out for their well-being as well. So when a child learns this from their parents as a result of the parents' unconditional love, I believe they're the ones setting the stage for the rest of their lives for the children in terms of what does it mean to be loved versus what does it mean to love someone else or something else. Where you set standards that, okay, if I truly love someone or something, I shouldn't just impose myself on that person. I should give them a choice. I should make them feel involved and so on and so forth. Like, make them feel like they belong with me, or make them feel that they have a voice and a choice in whatever's going on, right? It can't be a controlling one-sided thing, otherwise it's not love. So
Yeah,
I think that's another aspect that we should look at as well, on how love can set a template for other emotions as well in terms of being human.
yeah, and just to build on those last 2 points from Mr. Anusa, it's okay. So the last like 10 minutes of yesterday's philosophy club meeting was Isra and I going back and forth, trying to figure out what happens when love fades. Because most of the conversation up to that point was all about what love is, when you experience it, its origin. So what about its end? And I can't recall the name of the psychologist, but she described it as the four horsemen of the apocalypse. It's like it's contempt. Contempt was the one she emphasized the most. And if you're familiar with the term contempt, it means disdain for the other person, not just their opinions, but like their way of being. Just
Their
contempt for the whole, their entire sense of self. Yeah. And so, I mean, when you consider that as sort of like the death knell for a relationship, even one that might have already included marriage and children and stuff like that, and animals or what have you, shared activities. I go back to that last part of the documentary when the scientist who looks like a young Ryan Reynolds, he was introducing MDMA. And, if we take what Isra was saying here and consider it as love somehow being a gateway to these other emotions, well, there are a lot of pharmaceutical advancements made in the effort to be able to control emotions, not even control them, but sort of like hone them. So you take a pill for your anxiety, you take a pill for your depression, and then you can lead a better life, live a better life. If you didn't have that sort of maternal parenting growing up, going back to the initial example with the monkey, I mean, what's so bad about taking a pill that helps you understand the emotion of love and helps you get a stronger grasp of it? Isn't that progress? That's kind of what the film is sort of pushing, I think.
But you kind of get at an interesting thought here, because I mean, is it possible then, if some people don't have a certain chemical balance in their brain, that people just aren't naturally capable of love? Is that what we're kind of getting at? And I mean, I think conclusively and concretely you can say yes. Is that just like how if some people aren't capable of empathy, they might not be capable of certain affections. And that kind of asks a better question, is like, does applying this artificial, I guess, chemical, can that basically introduce love into someone's life? And if it does, then how? I'm sorry?
I mean, why call it, not to interrupt, but why call it artificial? If love is reduced to chemical interactions and then two human beings just trying to ride those waves together, then just introducing a new chemical to balance out, it's just one chemical versus another. How's that artificial? It's all natural.
We call artificial intelligence artificial, but it's just intelligence. That's why I just said it like that.
Because we still submit to a higher power. That's why. Because until now, an artificial that is truly independent has not been seen aside from things that are naturally born. Man-made things do not have that level of intelligence, and that's why we call it artificial intelligence.
Yeah, but that's not what I'm saying though. I'm saying like artificial is like an implication that it was made by us or how we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I mean by the artificial chemical essentially, is that we're essentially garnering it in an artificial way.
No, I don't disagree. I'm trying to
that's not even just semantics.
Yeah, you're just trying to write a note for yourself later.
No, we don't want to. I get what you're saying. I agree. So let's artificial, chemical. It doesn't make a difference.
But on
I think
the monkey experiment.
Are we gonna try to talk like all at the same time?
On the monkey experiment that you were referring to, Professor Manzi, I think it was extremely flawed and it was extremely biased to show specific results that the scientists wanted, because you take a creature like a monkey or anything, any living, breathing, moving thing, you keep it separate from the society and keep it with its mother, it's still gonna accept society. But the moment you take it away from its mother and keep it within a society, it's still gonna dissociate from the society itself. Why do you think there's so many cases with orphans that end up in a lot of outbursts when it comes to emotion, when it comes to physical outbursts, versus someone who has been isolated from the society but has been kept with a family or even a single mother, to say? So that's why I think even if you take an antisocial creature like a cheetah, because they are individualistic, they always remain by themselves. The mother takes care of the cub at least until the cub is 2 years old. But cheetahs are not society animals like mice and monkeys or even humans. Then why does the mother take care of its child? Not because of just nurturing and teaching it, because the cub needs to learn how to adapt to that lifestyle. Versus if you look at lions, they live in big prides. And a lot of the time, they don't spend that time with their own mother. They usually have a separate foster mother dedicated by the tribe to take care of all children of the tribe. So that's why I say it was very flawed to show very specific results that those scientists wanted to portray.
Yeah, I think they're trying to, again, they're all evolutionists, every single scientist. So they wanted to start with the monkey and say, look, even monkeys need to be touched. And they respond to touch more than they respond to the nutrients they're getting. So, physical contact is like an absolute necessity. So, I mean, don't get me wrong. I also have problems with that study. But, I mean, look, draw upon y'all's own experiences. I don't know who among y'all has ever felt like they've really been in love. But ask yourself, you don't have to share if you don't want or anything, but like ask yourself, what was it that led you to that conclusion? And more specifically, what was it that you missed? Did you miss the sensation of being held? I mean, that's something that they're arguing here is hardwired into our organicity. Yeah, I think this is why also people like things like hot showers. A hot shower feels like a hug. It really does. It's not just cleaning. It's you like it. You're kind of like, it's almost like replicating being embraced in a very sort of private, intimate way. I think a deeper question I wish they'd explored would have been, why do children sometimes,
Hey, how's it going?
not respect, why do children sometimes grow distant from their family? If the entire emphasis was on, the familiarity and you become familiar. Did you hear that one part early on where it's like, yeah, so children, they really grow attached to their parents because they become accustomed to that scent. But then when they hit puberty, suddenly that same scent repulses them. And she was like, yeah, that's probably a good thing. It's like, yeah, probably is. It's pretty likely. But I mean, the idea here is that we evolve as individual organisms to a certain point where literally the very sensations that we are experiencing, we process differently. And so that begs the question, why do we process them differently? And so, they went into the Vegas Center and stuff like that. They're trying so hard to find out, physiologically speaking, why love is the kind of thing that we have come to sort of value. And they want to say the reason we value love so much is it's because that's what we are. We are inherently loving creatures, with the understanding that sometimes, just like any other, attributes, we could be deficient in it, or we could be, especially adept at it. And those who are deficient, you can, again, maybe based on no fault of your own, again, it could be upbringing, it could be biochemical imbalances, but there's a way to compensate for it. And in such a way where, well, people are going to want to find compensation for it because everybody seems to value love, and it's not an accident. I want to talk about something else too. We don't have to talk about it now, but I want to hear your impressions of it. What did you think of the ethics of some of these studies, where they're bringing people in and telling them to fight? I want you to get into an argument with your partner right now, and it has to be real. So
I actually was thinking that with the partner. I was like, oh my God. Because like the way I was seeing is like, okay, let's assume that they do not manage to control it properly. The one who are gonna get the consequences later on is gonna be the partner, not the psychiatrist or whatever is it, the doctor. That they're gonna be the
On
one
top
like
of it,
it's like
on top of it, the
Jesus.
results would have been skewed anyways. If you're telling somebody to fight, it's not an actual fight. Like, yeah, you can make up a reason to fight. You don't need a reason to fight if you want to fight. Like, there's no reason. But if you're telling somebody explicitly that I want you to fight, so because we're doing the study, so I think that comes up with what you shared earlier about Einstein influencing the results. So I think that's exactly what they did. So I think the results should have been dismissed because it was skewed or because it was being monitored in that environment. Yes, there needed to have been some parameters or some other standards, but telling somebody explicitly to fight is not, I don't think that was right. And I was sad for the monkey, baby monkey. That is where I
Yeah,
draw the line. That is where I was like, okay, no, this is so
that
wrong.
monkey
You
was
shouldn't do
suffering
that.
way too much. It was crazy. No, yeah, I mean the monkey unexcusable. And we were like, leave the monkey out, ah. But no, but like no, like for me, going back to the partner, like is it's crazy. I mean, I do believe that there is a point because then you can discuss about what is being handled there, so you can kind of like get to hear the things that normally you should be telling like normally. The whole thing is like I don't know. I have an issue because if you just like let's say that they start like opening up like way too much. And when I say way too much, it's like hardcore stuff. Like, are they really able to like manage it? Like, where I wasn't even completely sure what they were testing. They were just using them to see how the emotions were being handled, and I kind of felt like whether they resolved the problem or not was secondary. They just really wanted to see how they were being like how they were interacting with each other. So it's kind of like you're exposing them to that without caring if they're gonna be good standing afterwards. So, like that's like no, at least try to like make it
A better
work.
result might have been a better test might have been like the couple with the burn marks. They sent the couple back home in their natural setting, in their natural environment. So if they made the argument happen, or if the argument occurred in the natural setting, in the natural environment, that would have been a true test, or that would have been a true result, or the results that came from there would have been better because you have it so loud up there. So in that case, that's how I feel like it would have been better, because they would have been in their natural settings. There would have been more triggers, or there would have been more normalcy baseline in terms of, okay, that would be the normal setting. Did our experiment really work or not?
But in defense to that, the burn mark experiment was only researching or doing research on whether additional oxytocin or increased oxytocin levels can help heal. That was the entire outcome of that experiment. In that experiment, they were not fighting or they were not doing anything. The fighting experiment we're referring to is the one where they had like I think it was a psychologist, that lady who referred to the four horsemen of death or something. Her experiment, that couple was, I mean, it's mundane. I mean, I would be surprised if this did not happen in a household where they've been married 5+ years. And the other couple who were fighting over washing dishes, I fight with my own dad over washing dishes. That does not prove anything. I like to scrub more. He likes to use more soap. I put in more elbow grease. He likes to put in more water. It does not prove anything that a couple is fighting. Okay, a couple is fighting. Oh, that's so bad. Like,
You
yes,
will
it
be
is. It is. It
surprised.
is. It is a learning process because in a fight, when emotions are heightened, especially towards rage, anger, frustration, aggression, and those kind of aspects, you can see a person's true self. I mean, I could be the politest person you know, but as soon as I get angry, I have this foul mouth that oh God, like I spew out fire as if I'm burning on the inside. But see, you can see that the dog looks angry, but he's not. And during a fight, you might see the worst side of a person. And in our religion, there was a caliph. His name was Ali. May God be pleased with him. He said, if you want to know a person's true self, either travel with him or I think see them in anger. I can't remember the other one, But the travel aspect is because it's very uncomfortable. You're away from home and you let out all these emotions that are anxiety, frustration, homesickness, sense of adventure, excitement, and you see all these things firsthand. And that's why I bring it to attention that if you want to see a person's true self, look at them when they're angry, not when they're doing something good, because I can fake being good, but I cannot fake being angry.
I
Yeah,
will
and
add to that culturally speaking, like we've seen a lot of examples, or we've heard of a lot of sayings where they're like, where there's love, there's this fight to be, there's bound to be some sort of like disagreement or some sort of anger, not anger specifically, but disagreements in general. Like fights are bound to happen if people are living together. And if fights happen, if you think you can repair the fight, or if you think you can repair the bond, don't just desert that relationship because of that one fight or because of that one incident. Look at it as a whole. Don't look at it from the perspective of, oh, that's what you said to me. See what led up to it. See how did it happen. Was it truly your fault, or is that person projecting, and so on? I think I have to go pray. So I'd love to keep talking, but I'll check back in once I'm done praying. But this has been a great discussion, guys. Thank you so much, Professor Manzi, and thank you guys for this discussion. And I hope we take away some very important key aspects from this entire thing.
thanks.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Oh, bye, guys.
The result is like wait for the oxytocin pill. Wait for it.
I mean,
Everyone's gonna be
there's
happy
nasal
after.
spray. You can resort to that if you want.
Well, that's kind of the thing, is that it's and this is why I'm questioning the ethics. I mean, these scientists are like, if we're going to study love, we have to find a couple whose love is failing. And so we have to bring them in, and then we have to antagonize them. Like, imagine if you're the scientist with this grant to study this stuff, and it's like, so Catherine, how do you feel about Jonathan? And Catherine's like, well, I really hate it when I ask him to take out the garbage and he doesn't. And you're like, wow, Jonathan, she really dissed you. How do you feel about that? I mean, it's like, I mean, talk about artificial. But I guess the point is that it's not artificial, because that one, the 2 or 3 of the horsemen of the apocalypse are sort of there rearing their heads. What's so fascinating to me, and I think this is how they justified it ethically, is that later on the subjects of that particular study, they were like, and this was Israel's point, addressing this stuff kind of helped us remember the initial stages of love, because you're able to get a perspective on how things have changed. Now, I don't know if that fully does sort of.
I don't think it's completely true, because sometimes, like, I think it depends on the personality of somebody. Maybe someone like really try to focus on the root and try to like work through it, but I think some other people may try to just focus on like the issue still. It's kind of like stuck with the inconformity of like still not fixed, and which is also something that I think Yusha did mention, and it is true also for me. It's like for me, and I say this not only to those who I have as a partner, but like important people in my life. I always say like, listen, I don't care how we wake up. We can be by fighting, but please, like at the night, let's try to like do something that make it better. I always that for me is like vital. Like for me, that's like extremely important. I would, and like for yes, I will like do like whatever it takes so I can make this better like right now so we can sleep better, because then like I think that that's a process also that the state of mind or like the hormones that you sleep follows you throughout your whole sleeping process. So you actually carry that with you until you wake up. So
Yeah, I mean,
When I was doing some research on love for Tuesday's topic, which I still apologize that I could not attend, but I will go back and watch the recording of it. When I was doing research for that, I read an article where I don't know, it was a weird article because in it the writer said that love is the only emotion which is destined to win, and that got me thinking that is see, love cannot be all things good. It has to have bad things as well, like fights, like arguments, like disliking someone's physical appearance or their voice or anything. There has to be some sort of conflict for
but
love
there
to
is.
emerge. Why? Because if we do not submit and accept other person's negative aspects, it is not love at that point. It's purely submission.
No, but I think there are bad aspect that comes with love, and I do believe that it's a point that we have touched before. That it's like love exposes you to different emotions, and sometimes those emotions is like it reflects into like highly dependent on the person, and you're willing to like try to constrain the freedom of this person to like coexist with different individuals because the sole idea that that person may love somebody instead of you, it drives you crazy. So you start like acting in a way that it is not healthy for nobody, and I think that's one of the aspect that's why I do believe that even though we do not understand completely the concept of love, like we should try to educate people even like when they're kids or what it is, so you can have some type of like something, you know, it's like instead of just expecting them to like go through it like by themselves. I think that that's something that it should be carried on more, because yes, we're reading it, Orlando and I, for a class right now, but I already knew that like before, that those countries who are more open to these experiences and they teach like since kid, like, hey, listen, this is a condom. Like they actually deal better in their adulthood on all those issues instead of just like letting them like go to life and fun
Yeah.
whatever.
And I do think, I mean, I'm sympathetic to that position. I mean, but at the same time, it's like you cannot introduce, again, in my opinion, well, you have to very carefully introduce this kind of thing to younger humans after they already sort of have a sense of how their emotions work. You know, I mean, I think this is why they made this emphasis on, you know, if somebody breaks up with you, does it affect your appetite? If it does affect your appetite, it means you're appropriately passionate. And if it doesn't affect your appetite, then you lack passion. I mean, for example, this was their emphasis on like the heart rate and stuff like that, where I think I found this the most interesting of all of their findings, is that you reach a certain point. This is the Vegas Center. You reach a certain point where your particular sort of heart rate sort of evens itself out, even when it comes to extreme situations and emotions. At a certain, doesn't really veer off from that. I mean, it sounds very deterministic. Now, people can get angry in different ways. Some people get quiet, some people get loud, but the whole point is that, but the heart's going to react the same way. So, I mean, maybe the outward expression differs, but the inward response is universal, interestingly enough. So if you apply that to things like, again, love, which causes you to act maybe very irrationally, and consider what they said at the beginning. I mean, they all but really just spoon-fed us this idea that human beings are inherently judgmental. And it's this trait that we've evolved with, where, you know, you judge people based upon threat or you know, friend. But now when it comes to stuff like love, you stop judging the person in the initial stages. Like that part of your brain shuts off for that particular person. And now that seems like a step back. That doesn't seem like evolution, but in fact, they're trying to say, no, this is, if it's natural, then it is evolution. And so that begs the question, well, why do human beings, regardless of where they come from, far east, far west, anywhere in between, why do all human beings behave this way? And again, I think the ultimate conclusion here is that, well, because at the end of the day, we are biological creatures first. But and even our loftiest concepts, such as love, you can trace them back to our inherent biology.
But I don't know if you guys noticed, but in the movie or the documentary, they showed love as being only physical. But me, as I mentioned, I'm not very physical, and today is my parents' anniversary, so last night I got some stuff for my mom's car, to like reindeer antlers and like one of those red noses that you put on your car. I got her those because she had wanted those since last Christmas. And that was my way of showing affection, and nowhere in between was there any physical contact, not even a hug or a handshake. And then there's my other sister, Yusra, who's now going to UT Arlington. Her way of showing affection is extremely physical, hugging and handshakes, and with my mom at least, hugging, kisses, handshakes, and whatnot. So to them, to the researchers at least, they showed that love can only be expressed physically, but that's not always the case. With my brother, and I'm sure Johnny and others who have brothers can relate, we find it more loving when we punch or kick our brother as compared to hug or kiss them. It's more amusing. It's a stronger bond when we get aggressive with each other, and that's just how it is. And
Not assuming Johnny was me.
in the documentary, they only go over our what's it called, love towards humans, but it's completely different when it comes to something non-human. And this is a bracelet that I made out of my cat's collar. She had died back in 2016 when I first moved to the USA, and she died in the holding facility that was taking care of her back in Saudi Arabia. And there was nothing I could do to, kind of comfort her or anything. I just got an email that I'm sorry, your pet ID this has expired on this day, and that was it basically. So with that heartbreak and with that rush of emotion, now I'm a man who has quite a lot of control over my emotions aside from aggression. That is still something I'm working on, but generally I don't show much emotion, and that was the thing that like made me feel like I am not who I am. Like I was missing a huge part of me. It was worse than losing a limb or half my body for that matter. And until today, every time I see a picture of her and see my interaction with her or find something of hers, I end up bawling. Like there's no controlling it. And that's something that these scientists, I think, don't want to understand, that our love is not only towards humans, and it's not always physical.
I don't think those scientists were. I'm sorry, I'll let you go.
Oh, go for it. Go for it.
I don't think those scientists are necessarily arguing that it's only physical. I think they were only getting at one aspect. I mean, if you really think about these documentaries, there's only so much you can cover.
True.
But I think the whole argument here is that there's a certain physicality to love, essentially. And basically, in saying that, I mean, what I'm saying is like what we associate with love is what we find to be meaningful. And I would say what they argue is that inherently we find physicality meaningful. Is that although you might say you don't enjoy it, if you were to be open to it, or if most people are open to it, I guess you could say, when you do experience certain physical aspects, certain physicalities, your body responds in a certain way. Certain chemicals are released, and so with that being the case, that to them is the concrete proof that essentially physicality has to do with love, whether you would like it or not, whether it's a cultural appropriation or not. And I think that's the case. Physicality. I can't say that word.
Physicality.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's an accident, if I were to take their perspective, that you have a bracelet that you can feel. I mean, the touch of it reminds you of your cat. And it's almost like a cat connection. Thank you, folks.
Cat connection. A cat connection.
He was saving that one.
Yeah, just for us. Yeah, and again, thank you for responding to the ethical aspect of things, and pointing out what I think are legitimate criticisms for sure. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I was stunned when they were like, we're going to give them third-degree burns for the sake of this experiment. Like, that was wild to me. I mean, we're going to inflict. Remember, the title of this documentary is Pleasure and Pain.
Mm-hmm.
So pain is, a necessary role they feel in this, specifically because they're trying to trace the actual physical healing effects of something like love. And again, what they're saying is that the reason why love can heal you physically, and I mean, this lady literally said, our study confirms this. But the reason why is because love is also physical. So, I mean, I love what you're saying here, no pun intended, Orlando, of, we decide sort of what is meaningful to us. But the documentary is saying not really. Like, it's so much of it is hardwired into the brain.
Is that
I
really what
mean,
it's saying though? I don't know if that's
uh,
the case. I think
I
it's
mean,
giving
I
an
think it's kind of
aspect.
like I think it starts maybe at some point, but I believe that part of being human, I think, is to kind of like go a little bit after that. I don't think
Further,
like
yeah.
it's just like because then it's like you you like me, like I don't know. It doesn't happen that way.
At
It's
that
just
point,
kind
you
of
would just stuff him in a bag and put him on your shoulder.
yeah. Otherwise, like yeah, like woman will be like, yeah, you
Oh, that's
good,
funny.
you
Smell
know.
your booty.
No, seriously, they were saying
You're
like
a girl.
women are better like pickpocketing like those who are better fitted for them, like um or with the
Pheromone.
hormones and stuff like pheromones. Yeah, like no, I would hope that part of what it makes a human is like we're able to transcend that part of it. Like I believe it is there. I'm not saying that it's not, but we're able to analyze like, okay, is it really just this? Can we go over? And I think that's what people do.
Well,
I'm
maybe
again with
maybe there's an
you.
argument there though, Professor Mans. Maybe there is an argument there. Maybe you can say like your certain genetics or certain chemical balances can determine like whether you're open to affection like physicality or not, or whether you're more prone to finding external things meaningful. Maybe because in certain cultures there's specific sort of idealizations like specific things of love that maybe they sexually select each other genetically so that only people who fit this criteria can actually mate and then succeed. And so therefore in that culture it's not uncommon that the chemical balances within their brain are very similar to each other's. And so that could be an argument to say that essentially the chemical imbalances, genetics that can essentially predetermine what you will find to be loved later on.
I agree
That's a
with
great
that.
point.
I agree with you on that, Orlando. And to kind of further dive into it, I will say that in 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 the tribal areas of Saudi Arabia, there is yes. Now we're switching roles, like, and in certain tribal areas of Saudi Arabia, people still get married, and their culture and tradition is they never see their wife, but the only thing they see is the wife's mother's hand.
Hmm.
And on that basis, they accept or reject proposals. But if you look at it, there there's no intricate rush of hormones. It's very minute because if if I see a woman's mother, there is substantial amount of chance that the woman that I'm interested in would be more closer to her mother in appearance at least. And then secondary, I hope for her temperament, behavior, her being cultured, civilized, and all that stuff. That stuff comes later. In in some parts of Africa, the 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 shinier a woman is, the more attractive she is. In other parts of Africa, where women have like really long necks and they put on these metal braces, the longer the neck, the more attractive the woman is. So there's no
And
set.
also the big thing that
Yeah,
definitely
there's like
Don't they have like
holes
the
they
big
do. A
things like
lot of there's basically what I'm trying to get at. There's a lot of different aspects that fall into this criteria, and we fall in love, quote unquote, with those who are similar to us but not the same, because we have to treat humans as magnets, and opposite ends of a magnet attract and not the same ones. We find people who are closer to us but not the same as us.
Interesting.
And that is, I think, the tricky aspect of what a lot of people try to overcome with programming these algorithms to promote that kind of matchmaking.
Yeah, I mean, consider how expensive things like perfume and cologne are. I mean, if you want to buy into this premise about the sense of smell, I mean, I think the whole science behind that kind of thing is to say, here's a scent that attracts most men or most women. And so if you're a guy, you're like, well, I don't smell like that naturally.
you
So let
can.
me artificially smell like that to trigger the chemical reaction. It's a
Tom Ford,
multi-billion
Russell
dollar industry.
Leather.
But isn't that interesting though that like these social constructs, so the whole idea here was that like, oh, we're just our biology. But isn't it now that like our social constructs are actually changing our biology in the sense that it's affecting which genetics are like actually favored? Isn't that interesting that to the point we've kind of evolved to the point where now we are choosing the evolution, and it's done so through sexual selection or what have you, or natural selection, things like that. That's interesting.
I mean, it's not only limited to that. I'm glad you brought it up. I was gonna bring it up, but then I forgot. Now we have the most amount of mixed race couples
That's true.
than ever before.
Yep.
And
Brazil.
back when slavery was still in effect throughout the world, people, white people specifically in the Americas, they were more inclined towards fair-colored African American women. Like,
Fair color.
I'm gonna try and put it as softly as I can without sounding racist.
Just do it. We know. Just
Women
do it.
who have physical appearance
Mhm.
of a black woman, fuller lips, wider nose, bigger eyes, more toned ears,
Mhm.
slimmer waist, bigger bust, bigger hips, and thicker waist, but not white.
Yeah,
So
and
you
that
mean
comes
like,
back to the premise. Yeah.
okay, so you mean like white features, but it's like the color.
No, black features,
Oh, black feature, but with
but not
white.
white skin tone, like somewhere in between, like, I don't know.
Tan.
Guys, I hate to interrupt. I gotta go. I have to meet with a student. They're gonna give me a group presentation in like 30 seconds. This was an awesome conversation.
A group
Please continue.
presentation.
3 hours, man.
All right.
No, I'm serious. Yeah, I mean,
30
again,
seconds.
my thoughts were both.
20.
What do you say?
10 seconds.
I thought you meant like they're giving it to you in 30 seconds. Like they're gonna give you the whole presentation in 30 seconds.
I gotta meet them in 10 seconds ago.
30 seconds.
Yeah, I gotta head home too, guys. I've been here for the longest amount of time. I'll see if you guys are still in the call. I'll join in when I reach home. But it's been awesome, and I
Yeah.
think this was the
I'm
most
probably gonna call as well because
involving film series we've done so far. I mean, aside from Right
It's
Down.
because of me. It's because of me. I came and
Do you-
did
Sorry, do you hear someone?
I
Mhm.
think,
I
I
cannot
think
see
there's someone
anything.
background noise.
I
Can,
think
can
I
you
drink
you guys, I think we need to kick this
and
extra
that's why
person
it's so
out. We need to kick the extra
Mhm.
person.
Yeah, I think we're being hacked. Somebody just chime in here.
Well, first of all,
Uh,
poor security system. Second of, you guys are just grateful you don't know it yet.
Yes, exactly. We are grateful. I just want to point this out. Mans is still here. He's making students
lying,
wait.
right?
Let's
I'm
debate
trying
about.
to
Let's talk about the ethics of that decision. He's
Of that.
making students
Tell you
wait.
Very
that-
ethical.
tell you
Very
guys to thank
ethical.
you for saving the day today, because otherwise we couldn't have watched it. All right, thanks.
Sorry I
Oh,
wasn't here.
We're
yes.
telling you're
guys.
not thankful and that he did his job. Thank you so much.
Perfect.
All right.
Later, y'all.
Have a good night,
Later.
guys.
Bye, Professor
Bye.
Rosie.
Thank you.
Learning so much about ethics right now. Unbelievable. He's my professor. Caray. Okay.
That's such a role model. Excellent role model.
Yes, an excellent role model. So, is your day being good?
Yes, so far so good.
A part of it?
So far so good.
Oh, so far so good. Mine has been very long. I started driving back home since around 6, and I arrived like at 9 or 10. It was like a 14 hours drive.
Wow. So you
Yes,
drove all the way, just you?
and a friend. Yeah.
And then it's not that much of an accomplishment, honestly. Unless you drove like 10 hours and that guy drove like, what, 4 hours?
I mean, potato, tomato. I mean, but there is. I mean, this is how it happened. Like my friends, like, listen, I have this deadline. The application did not work on time, so the only time I can make it on time is if I drive, but I cannot do it by myself. That was like Sunday night, and it's like, all right. So like imagine like that happened at 7, and by 10 we were driving to Kentucky, like and we arrived on time, and then we were there. But lucky enough, it was like the first big snow of Kentucky. So in my driving, yes, no, but this is a fun time. While I was driving, I did several car friends. I made several car friends. One of them was a truck. So the truck, he started like being behind me and started like boom, boom, and like I don't understand. So I went to the other side, and then he just like passed me and like started like slowing down. Like this guy is crazy. So like I start like pass him, and he like start like boom, boom, like that's, and we like I pass him and he passed me, and we start doing like this for like 90 or 100 miles. So imagine that, but with the snow, and like we were just kind of like having fun at the end. We were every time that we were like passing by, we start like saying hi, and then we kind of like start like so we would travel on the road. But it was fun. It was a fun experience, and then the snow was very beautiful. So yeah, it was fun, and then we come back. And most of the time I was with no battery on my phone, which is also interesting. But it is what it is.
Oh, well.
All
Okay,
right.
well, Yusha's about to come home, so I need to prep something to eat. And it was a wonderful discussion, and you have a great night. Don't mess with your puppy too much. It's too tiny for you, so you shouldn't mess with it too much.
He's staying with me the whole time, and he was
No, no,
biting.
no. He doesn't know better. He doesn't know better
He
yet.
knows
So he,
exactly good. Like
nah.
he chose me, and he was biting me like the whole movie. He was like,
Yeah, he's just telling you, hey, you're not good.
and he took so big dumps like bah, bah, around the house like oh my god. But I was watching movies. So it's like yeah, I'm busy. I'm in a meeting.
Oh wow, that is wow, that is
Yeah, I know.
wonderful.
Yes, that's wonderful. Okay,
All right,
nice to
have a
see
great
you.
night.
Well,
Yeah,
and
nice
right now
to see
just the
you too.
picture. And
Oh, it is a picture.
yeah, I think you said I don't remember which day you agreed to have the interview. If it was on Thursday or
It's
Friday.
in the email. I forgot. It's in the email. I think it's not a set date yet. It's either Thursday or Friday. And I ruined my shirt.
Mm. Fun. So I will sort that out tomorrow morning since I'm gonna do 1 or 2 assignments and then I'm gonna sleep and I will wake up and sort those things out. But so far so good. And then you can have a little bit more information about the honors in action, which it changed after we spoke, but in a good way. But it did imply a lot of extra legwork after that. But it was fine. We managed. So yeah. So be safe. Give something good to Yusha, and I hope your classes are going good. Woo.
All right, you too. Have a great time and don't stress out too much for the finals.
No, I'm fine. I already have my grades. All I have to do is finish the writing. I don't have finals actually. But well,
Lucky.
I'm just very lucky.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
All
take
right,
care.
have a good night. Bye bye.
You too.